Okay, let's start this. We got a workshop. It is December the 7th, 10:34, Commissioners Courtroom, 200 South Texas Avenue, Suite 106. First item is called to order. The second is a presentation of proposed election precinct changes by Election Administrator Trudy Hancock or her designee. Trudy.
Good morning. We had quite a few changes to go through. Some had to do with the adjusting of the commissioner precinct lines. Those were our biggest changes. And then we did some cleanup. And then we had several precincts that had to be split because of population. The law requires any precinct over 5,000. We can't have a precinct over 5,000. So we did have several precincts that were either right on the bubble or over 5,000. So we did have some changes to make there. And this is too hard to see, so I worked with Megan at Road and Bridge. She was wonderful. So if any of you see Megan, tell her she did a wonderful job. And so she's gone through all the changes and made us side-by-sides to be able to see what the changes were. So the first one was due to the commissioner line changes. Precinct 27 was a pretty large precinct, and now it has been split at the highway here, and so we created Precinct 54 below that.
What's the population of 54, do you know?
No, I didn't get those numbers together. I didn't think about population. I was just
Okay.
worried about getting maps together so we would be able to see those changes.
Okay, thanks, Trudy.
But I will submit those requests to Sid and see if we can get those numbers.
Yeah.
Our next change is a split for 31. We split it to make Precinct 55. And then this precinct was also split. These were all due to the commissioner changes. We had three commissioner changes in this big Precinct 35. So Precinct 55, oops, pushed the wrong button. There you go. So we created Precinct 55 to take in, it was just added to, this portion was added to 55. It was a split out because of the commissioner lines. And then 74 was this all was the impact from Precinct 35 being split from the commissioners. So 74 used to go across, and so now it's been split. Precinct 70 has now been the leg. Sorry, keep hitting the wrong button. Precinct 70 here, this leg used to come down, and we took that into 29 instead of having to create a new precinct. And then we did a little bit of cleanup in 81. We added a couple of the smaller precincts that were caused due to annexing by the city. We had Precinct 62 and 64 here, and we just absorbed those into 81 to make that one contiguous precinct. And then here in 26, we absorbed 103 into 26. A lot of these changes were able to be made because of the seats 12 and 14, those lines being changed, so we were able to absorb some of the smaller precincts into the larger ones. And then Precinct 7, there's a little bitty 104 right here that we were able to absorb into Precinct 7. And then 45, Precinct 89 was out there kind of by itself, and we were able, because of 12 and 14 changes, we're able to absorb it into 45. And then the city annexed this little bitty portion right here. We were able to absorb it into 101. It doesn't look like you would be able to because it's not contiguous. But the way the city annexed, they annexed up the road and that property, so we were able to suck it into 101 instead of it having to be its own separate precinct. And then 58 and 105, we had to split those. We had to split it here because the line originally ran this down here, and this is city limits, and there are voters in that, and so we were not able to absorb it, leave it into 58. So we split it out and made it 105, so that way it runs along the city limits. And then this is a split due to population. We had to split precinct 2 and created precinct 73. And this is also due to population here. So we split precinct 34 and created 75. And all of our changes, we were able to use major thoroughfares, so I think that'll help our voters be able to depict their lines a lot easier. And then same here with precinct 39, we created precinct 76. And then precinct 40 was, we had to split part of that off, and we created precinct 62. And then with 41, we created precinct 64. Let me back up. Let me say one thing about this. This long arm of the City of College Station comes out. There is an exception to the rule for city limits being within one precinct. We did decide to take that into precinct 54 instead of leaving it out there all by itself. There are currently no voters in that precinct. We are able to, in our system, denote that that is within the city limits. So if there any voters do move out there, that they would get the correct ballot and be able to vote on city items, but currently there are no voters in that, so we just felt at this time it was better, instead of having to create a separate precinct, to just absorb it into 54. And then we also split precinct 63 to create 88. And then split 69 to create 100. And those are all of our changes.
So how many precincts did we have before, and how many do we have now?
We had 98.
98?
Yes, and we are still at that number. Between the precincts that we lost, the precincts we had to split, we reused those numbers, and we still have the same number of precincts. So,
Trudy, could you go back to 7 on your map, or can you talk to me about 7? I think we added some area, to 7.
tell me when you see it. 7. The only thing I see is this 104, this little bitty part here that we took in. Let me see on my list. I don't see on my list from Sid that we did anything additional to 7.
Okay, I couldn't figure out what you were.
Right, it's just that one little bitty portion. There's a little bitty precinct right here that you can't really see, that we just sucked it into 7 to get rid of some of those smaller precincts that were created because of annexations.
Where, can you see 104 where it says it on the left?
It's right here.
Just right there on the left screen.
Looks like just a community.
Yeah, it's just a little bitty sliver.
You know what community that
Is that out there on Highway 30? Is that what it
is?
is?
No, I
Where's that?
think that's on 21.
Oh, maybe that's that development that went in off of Overlines.
Yeah, that was what I was wondering, if that's in 7 now.
Yeah, it's in 7.
Oh, really?
Is that that Rudder Point subdivision that's gone in out there near the airport?
I don't know exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that I mean, I thought Overlines was the dividing line.
Absolutely. I was going to say, there's a commissioner's precinct question that I have in there.
Okay, then I'll have,
Will you note it
I'll
and
get
look
with
at it
Sid
for
and
me?
look at that then.
I know that 4 and,
It would still be in 4.
Well, that's what I
oh, it would
thought,
be in 4,
but
okay.
if it's in that
But if
voting
it's in
precinct
voting
7,
precinct 7,
it wouldn't
Yeah.
be. That's what, I guess that's what
Oh,
your
you're
question
saying
is.
that is
It
exactly
wouldn't
my
be.
question. If they've taken part of that and put it in
We
voting
need to
precinct
check it.
7,
Let's
it'd be in a
check it.
different commissioner
Okay.
precinct.
Yeah, let's
I'll
check
follow
that.
up with that and
Yeah.
make sure.
Okay, thank you, Trudy.
And what subdivision do you think it is?
I think Rudder Point may be the subdivision in question. I'm not sure of that.
Okay,
Because I believe Overlines was the dividing line between 7 and, I'm not sure what
No,
voter
104.
precinct that is, but it's precinct 4 commissioner on the,
okay,
as you're going out,
Yes,
on
it
the
is.
left-hand side and,
Yeah.
2 on
two
the
on
other.
the right-hand
That's
side.
correct, yeah.
well, we've come across a couple of tweaks that we had to make after we met with Sid,
Yeah,
so
I think that needs some
that may be,
attention.
okay. Any other questions?
Well, I'm just comment is great work, thank you, and this is important to the local precinct chairs and realigning with the state representative district changes, I think, as much as anything. But when I look at all of this, I think about the differences between the voting precincts themselves. I become even more and more pleased with the fact that we vote according to vote centers, as
Correct.
opposed to having your specific precinct
You have to vote,
location
yeah.
be the only place that you can vote. I really think that that's a big plus for everybody and a great incentive for more voter turnout, so we hear from more people in the county.
Yeah,
We
it
do,
does
because
make
sometimes when you work across the county or something, when you live in one area and have to drive,
Yes.
you may drive by one that's a lot more convenient to be able to go to, so.
Okay, is there anybody from the public that wants to ask questions? Susan, come on up to the microphone. So,
Thank you for letting us be here today. The question of election precincts in Brazos. I'm sorry, my name is Susan Law. I'm here as a citizen. 3 years ago, I became involved in the front lines of one of the political parties in Brazos County. And to me, the first thing you do is look for opportunities, challenges, and successes where you're operating. And since our basic foundation of political activity is the election precinct, I went back and trended the primary elections in 2016 and 18 and compared the two parties that had primary elections, compared their registered voters, compared the turnout, trended the turnout between the 2 years, looked at who had precinct chairs, who didn't, where were the deltas, those sort of things. And when I looked at that, there seemed to be disparity, a great deal of disparity. Precincts that had between 0 and 100 registered voters, there were 17. And precincts that had over 1,251 voters, and this was in 18. I picked the second year thinking maybe we had higher registration that year. I'm not sure that's completely true. There was fluctuation. There were 21. And I looked forward to the census. I did not look forward to the jammed up schedule. I didn't look forward to what the legislature was going to do in terms of time frame, which I think was untenable to do to the election administrators, to the Secretary of State, to anyone who runs for office, anyone who's in office, and the parties who are only our primary legal reason for being is to put on primary elections. That's it. To put on good primary elections. Now, there are other ancillary things that go with that, but putting on effective elections that get people informed and involved, if they wish to be, is what we do. At that time, I had a discussion with someone in the Elections Administration office about how exciting it was that we were going to be able to make some corrections in 2020. She wasn't as excited. And then about mid-year this year, David and I spoke with two of the members of the Commissioners Court and said, look, we just would like to share our concerns at the beginning of the redistricting process. We don't want to tell anyone how to do it. We're studying the law. We're consulting with attorneys. We would just like to input our concerns because this is something we've been trending and tracking for 3 years, and we think we have valid concerns. We'd like them considered. That didn't happen. And it didn't happen a week ago, yesterday, I learned that people were being told, you're still in your precinct, you can still file as a precinct chair. We've just shaved a little bit off here and there. And so people were being spoken to about precinct maps that had not been even heard by the Commissioners Court nor approved. And that was like, well, what do you do? What do you do when you've asked to input and it's been ignored or disregarded? You study more. And so what we learned in studying Title IV, Chapter 42 of the Election Precinct, Subchapter A and Subchapter B, was that in 4200, that compact and contiguous, just like we were told for the county Commissioners Court and for Congress and for everything else, is primary. And that this is a representative, this is the rebars of the foundation of representative government. And this is where we tie it together. This is how we make sure that people have access to information and to learn what their voting opportunities are. And I want everyone who wants to be involved to be involved. And I think when we look at the maps, if we look at the 2010 maps, and I have not looked closely at the new maps, that the compact and contiguous appears perhaps in some cases to have improved. There were certainly opportunities. And it appears that it adheres that no more than one of each territorial unit can be in a precinct. So a precinct chair can't be responsible for 2 state reps, for example. I also was distracted with the herring of between 100 and 5,000 members in a precinct. And then I did more research. And it's Harris County with 5 million people that has precincts with 5,000. And there are people in here who are precinct chairs, and they know how hard it is. And if you have 4,000 people in your precinct, you're not going to get them out to vote. You're not going to reach out and say, Karen, do you know who's on the ballot? Do you know what the election days are? Those kind of things. But if I've got 200 or 300, I've got them on speed dial. And I can call them in the car and talk to them. And that's a real advantage or disadvantage depending on which group you're in. In other counties, or Texas counties, the second through fourth have between 2.6 million to 2 million, and Travis has 1.3 million. Brazos has 234,000. Why would we want the same election precinct sizes as Harris County or Travis County? Loving County, and Texas law is tough because you have 5 million people living in Harris County. You've got 64 in Loving County, and it's a big place. So how do you write that law that, and we know how laws are written, that makes sense for everybody, that touches all the people in the state of Texas? 22 counties in Texas have under 2,000 people in them. So it's a balancing act to find that equitable representation, that allows each of us as citizens, each of us who want to become involved in the political process, the access to each other to have an effective representative government in society. One thing I'm really pleased to see that they did was eliminate the less populous precincts. There is a specific part of the statute that addresses that. And I found particularly interesting was that this is not my last bite at the apple. We're in a jam because we're at the end of the year. This is due to the Secretary of State by December 31st. If you use what's in the current statute for timing, we don't have enough time to get it done, but we have to. But in subchapter B, it provides that every odd year the County Commissioners Court is to look at this and make adjustments, which hasn't happened. And so I can be back here every year until we get it fixed. And I imagine I'll have more people with me each time. I have references. Are there any questions to that point? In our trending, we have done work on the population of the election precincts in 2018. Actually, in this statute, it specifies counties with 250,000 population, that the sweet spot, they don't use that word, I don't think Austin would use that word, the sweet spot for election precincts is between 500 and 750. What a doable number. I mean, that makes it a job that someone has time to do, so it doesn't go unfilled or it doesn't go undone, even though someone's sitting in it. I think there's stretch numbers there because we have a rural urban county, and that we could stretch that from 300 to 1,250 just to be practical. But those two other ends, we're not Loving County, and we're not Harris County, we're not even Travis County, thank God. So I would ask that as much as possible, if adjustments can be made, and I understand we are in dreadful circumstances with the delayed legislature, delayed census, all that sort of thing. But why not just get it right? Brazos is better. Thank you. Questions? Come on, Russ.
Susan, do you have specific recommendations as far as precincts, or you just brought
No,
broad
because
base?
I cannot access, although I've asked for it, I cannot access the data files so that I can run I can run the numbers between, and I don't want to tell the county how to do it. I want to say,
No, we'd love to have your suggestion, I'm sure.
I would say follow the law and do it in a way that honors the citizens. Do it in a way that honors the people who want to get the citizens involved.
So do you see somewhere we didn't follow the law? Are you seeing that?
I think that the high points were used. I don't see an absolute, because I didn't find in this statute, it may be somewhere else. The Texas Election Code is horrid. I've read too much of it. Am I wrong? I think that we have failed to solicit input from people. I don't know if other people in the community have had an opportunity to input. I know we did not, and we asked for it. I know that representative government is serious, and this is the foundation. This is where it starts. This is where you can get people involved who aren't political beings, but you just want to just come to the table, help make the decisions, own the decisions, so that we can all be responsible citizens.
Okay, so we had, you're well aware that we had a real short timetable to get it all done because of the, but we did have the public hearings to try to get citizens.
And that was on the county commissioner's end, but that was,
But there was, public came up and spoke some at those.
and I was here for quite,
I know you were. That's what
because
I'm
the
trying to-
first one was when Congress just made me madder than a hornet, splitting us up between 2 congressional districts.
We got that changed.
And the beauty of all of that was that in the end, some citizen voters and some elected officials, not that many, persuaded our state representative to fix it. And he did. He found a way to fix it in the middle of the night, and I giggled all night long. I was so happy. So it can work.
Well, and I hear you just talk about those compact lines and the congressman that we've got, and I'm sure he's great. I really didn't know him, didn't know anything about him, but if you look at that line, it runs from
It's
Travis
horrible.
County
My
all the way
son
over
in
to.
Lago Vista has the same congressman.
Yeah, I know.
But there's nothing you can say about that mess. But we can fix our own mess.
Is there something that you're seeing here that you want to fix?
I would like to see the numbers on the precincts and see if there's still the disparity, the wide disparity.
There's probably a disparity in terms of numbers, but I think we probably have more than 100 in most and less than 5,000 in others. But if we were to do our 235,000 people, roughly, and divide it into precincts of 750, we'd have 313 precincts. And I don't think that's workable.
It may not be, and that's why I suggested the stretch numbers, and I left some on the low end, because you're going to have people in mud districts. There are going to be exceptions where the lines just don't work.
Yeah.
And I get that. But to have a whole bunch of little bitty ones and a whole bunch of great big ones, and it just, why do it?
Yeah. Well,
And I do not think December, what is it, today's the 7th? It's all a blur. That we can, in 3 weeks, we can jump through a needle's eye and get this all done for the Secretary of State. The steps to finish this up are onerous, right? and that would be unreasonable. But I think we need to look at it again real soon. The statute tells us to. We missed an opportunity.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Mary Lynn, come up.
Mary Lynn Strata, City Secretary, Chief Election Official for the City of Bryan. Some of these small precincts were our fault. As you know, everybody wants to live in the City of Bryan, so we've had a lot of owner-requested annexations and small areas, and Trudy and her folks and your Road and Bridge Department have all been wonderful working with us, so y'all had to create some tiny little precincts, which now have been addressed with this redistricting plan, which is wonderful. But I did want to remind you all that, first of all, we have some more annexations coming, which will probably create some more precincts. But as you all know, the cities and school districts are on the bottom of the pecking order when it comes to redistricting. We can't do anything until you all are through with everything. And in talking with our attorneys at Bickerstaff, because we've retained Bickerstaff as well, they will not be addressing cities with November elections redistricting until they finish up cities with May elections. So our redistricting is going to take a little while, but I can tell you, just based on overall population figures of our current single-member districts, we are going to have changes in our districts, probably 4 of them. When that happens, we're probably going to need you all to create a few more precincts because, as you know, we can't cross precinct lines. So just kind of a forewarning that we're going to need to work with y'all come probably May-ish, I hope, at least by then. So just a little heads up about that. Do appreciate everything y'all do for us, though. Thank you, Judge.
Okay.
Thank you.
Question?
For me?
So the same, yes, for ISDs, I'm not familiar, for ISDs that have single-member districts like Bryan ISD does,
Yes.
and City of Bryan that has single-member districts, are they all subject to the same 5% rule as we were, or as counties are?
We're subject to a 10% rule.
10%.
Yes, total variation of 10% among the single-member districts. And
My guess would be you've got quite a lot of work to do, and so does BISD.
I think so, and I think 4 of our districts will have to change, at least 4 of them. I think one of them may be okay, but we have tried very hard. When we first went to districts back in the early 90s,
Right.
our lines didn't match, and it was total chaos and a lot of voter frustration and unhappiness. So we have since then made sure that the single-member district lines for the City of Bryan and Bryan ISD match within the city limits. Of course, then they extend further out. And that has saved a lot of confusion. So we are not to the point yet where we've actually sat down with the school district about what our thoughts are about it, but that will have to be happening probably right after the first of the year, as soon as we can get some more information from Sid. So, yeah, but it's 10%.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mary Lynn. Anybody else? Going once?
It's funny when you say the school district.
All right.
Which strike terror in there.
That's all we have on today's agenda. So with that, if there's no other comments, we'll adjourn. Thank y'all. Thank you for the input.